Gerald Fleming's most recent books are Night of Pure Breathing, prose poems from Hanging Loose Press, and Swimmer Climbing Onto Shore, which is from 16 Rivers Press. Fleming taught in San Francisco's public schools for 37 years and has written 3 books for teachers, including Rain, Steam, and Speed, a book of about journal writing, which I use every day right now. From 1995 to 2000, he edited and published the literary magazine Barnaby Mountain Review. In 2013, with his brother and sister, glass artists Bernie Fleming and Michaela Fleming, he launched the limited edition magazine One More Glass. About his newest book from 16 Rivers Press, The Choreographer, John Larkin writes, "All through The Choreographer, we encounter our own humanness in mirrors both dark and bright. Each of these pieces feels unexpected, yet somehow inevitable. I love their mordant wit, their sparseness and precision, their relentless truthfulness. This book is filled with music." Let's hear some of that music now. Please help me welcome Gerald Fleming.
I'm delighted to be here, and so many familiar faces. This is the 3rd time I've read here, and I see Gary and a number of other people, and many familiar faces from the anthology as well, from the Modesto Poets Anthology, which is a delightful piece of work, and congratulations. I'll read one poem from a book that came out a few years ago, Swimmer Climbing Onto Shore. This one's called Still Life, Man at Table. Is that too loud? No. A man in his 70s is breathing so softly that even we, a book in our hands in the late evening light, can hardly see him. But we see him, not in our darkening room, but in the room of this page. A page holds so much, doesn't it? An old man at his table in slant morning light, breathing silently, his newspaper spread in front of him, a cup of warm milk at his elbow. We know that the milk is yet untouched, will hardly be touched, though he himself has warmed it, as is his habit. He is heavy, the wide cheeks of a counselor, his eyes a little like Van Gogh's, but burdened with the naivete of Ophelia. It is this second for which his friends, far outside this picture, love him. In his newspaper, he is reading of wars. And though he is reading of wars, he is thinking of orchards and delicious apples, their mottled skin, the sugar they'll yield. Does he rise now and go out into the fields or out to market? Don't ask that. Put the man back in the box of this page, contain him here until its disintegration. Leave him alone. Can't you hear by the sound of his breath that at last he is happy? And this is a book that came out a couple of years ago from a lovely press in Brooklyn, Hanging Loose Press. It's been around for a long time. They're just great people. This piece is called, and there are prose poems. This piece is called Wapello, Iowa, 1956. For the boy before us, forever's flat, and everywhere he turns. And forever the fathers will be animated shadows, cardboard characters, brown-armed, lost in corn from dawn to gone light, alternating aftershaves like pretty Houston bankers, only here it's gasoline, pesticide, fertilizer, beer. Sundays the children sit united in their silence at the kitchen table as their father walks across the maple floors. The air that surrounds him sends down a whiff of his true skin, soap sweet and going sour. They are his children. They want in. Now the land exhales, now the wave of summer lifts. Night long in wind the dead stalks click and bend, and tomorrow that father, that half-mute two-footed presence, grunting, sopped, guides the stalling tractor across fall's third hard rain, cleaving out of view the boy's bones had not forgotten, soon bugless, birdless black sea clotted and glazed by glare of sky. If clapboard were glass, we'd see the father in bed, staring skyward like a dead man, and the son, supine behind a common wall, staring too. If thoughts were scrawled across foreheads, we'd read the mother's face of hope. May the hard, separate light that leaves the eyes of that man and his son unite and continue, dear Lord, to infinity. As for the son, he's stunned by paternal silence, the lack of war. What have I done? New juices below the skin move in on him like dark clouds across the plain. The light of himself in the mirror is awful, overwhelms. Winter, when the day wind blows with the scent of mountains, salt marsh, Black Hill, when the night wind is a train that rolls around those hills and down and over across the plain in the mud and slaps the house, rattles its frames, and there's too much noise, too much now for the boy to hear his voice grow thunder, feel those dark hairs sprout, while till midnight the father, sullen in the shed, cleans the tiller tines, lubricates the tractor, spits the mixed tobacco juice and beer. Out here, the angle of our stance against this land is true. Our stories, though half of them are lies, truer still. This story is simple, too familiar. The son stands up to an inheritance of corn. At 19, pulls the first silks down from his skin, and in the mirror sees the new blue suit, insurance. From Omaha to Denver, promotion, calling out like that Christmas wind. And in the beige motels, he dreams of being held close by a figure without a face, wakes, fades back to dream of a non-existent sister, wakes to leap from bed toward the 8 o'clock appointment, corn tongue hot and golden, selling policies, promotion Salt Lake, smell of new plastic and company cars, promotion Carson City, corn bones in the sunlight of new suits and the rattle of salaries, middle-aged man-child bending into wind on his own, bleeding toward California. Let's see. Barbara talked about the motif of a stranger comes to town as being one of the most important stories and one of the repeated stories over our history. And I really like that too. And those of us who either taught English or currently teach English might remember very well the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It was a tale that I love to teach. And that's one of the first times in our literature where the motif of the guest, it's really an archetype at this point, I think, comes in. So I wanted to see what could be done with the guest, the idea of the guest. This is from the new book, No Man's Land. The guest has decided to stay. He's called our house his country. And though we never told him we didn't believe in countries, he must have guessed it by the words we used. Jingoism, borderlessness. What a mistake it was to drink wine with him, say what was on our minds. He's planted a flag in the room we've let him sleep in. You went in to make his bed while he was out for a hike and saw it there. The flag's on a little metal stand on the table beside the bed, pale blue, and your face is on it. You came out and told me that. You were shaken, but not for the reasons I thought. You said it was the most beautiful picture of you you'd ever seen. It was as if he'd taken a photo of you on your bike as a child speeding down Chestnut Grade in summer. Wind, you said. Free. Before you met me, you said. Long before you met me. But this picture on the flag was of you as a woman, and you didn't understand. Go look, you said. I went to look. You'd put a lily on his pillow. We can't ask him to leave now, you said. He's claimed his territory. It doesn't seem unreasonable. The kids are gone. We hardly use that room, and he's charming, really, don't you think? He took my walking stick, I said, the one I cut from the old madrone, the one I carved to fit my own hand, and now he's out in the hills with it. I let him use it, you said. It rained so hard last night, and the trails are slick, and there's that creek he'll have to leap across. You let him use my walking stick? And he needed a hat, so I let him use your hat. What else did you give him, I asked. I gave him a bucket to gather chanterelles. He said he wanted to saute chanterelles tonight. We'll eat the first ones fresh from the pan, and I told him, fine. We'll have that Bordeaux we put away, but he said he'd better taste it first to see if it's right. It must be just right, and he liked it, and we both had a bit of it, and there's still a little left in the bottle, I think. You were at work, or we would have given you some, but I didn't know then about the flag. The flag is beautiful, don't you think? The flag is beautiful, I said. So you can see why I left the lily? I can see, I said. And you'll come down to dinner, dear, won't you? We're having chanterelles. He's showing me how to recognize chanterelles. How wonderful just to say their name, isn't it? Chanterelles, I said. He's sweet about this flag thing, this country thing, you said. We were standing in the kitchen drinking wine, and he said to me, I'll be the king and you'll be the queen, dilly dilly. Okay, I'll be the queen, I said, and he came over to me and he put his hands around my waist like this, and he said, the queen has her queenly duties, and I shouldn't have liked it, I suppose, but I said, yes, the queen does have her queenly duties. And he said, this was a no man's land before, wasn't it? And now I claim it. Do you think this was a no man's land? Do you think so? And oh, he seemed a little anxious about the mountain lion on the ridge. Someone saw it again last week, so I gave him your pistol too. I read that at one of the first readings for this book, and someone came up to my wife after and asked her if that really happened. This one's a little easier to handle, I think. It's called... And no, it didn't. I should answer that question. Okay. This piece is called just Letter, and the date is January 14th, 1910. Dear Marie, I received your letter yesterday, and like you, I do wish you had more time to write. Each of your words is precious to me, and as I read them again and again, they take on a rather magnified importance, I fear, an importance unfair to you. I suppose I can say things are fine here, but the winter already is wearying, and though I am not an old man, today the prospect of repeating winter after winter does not appeal. Luck is with me, certainly. The roof patch I did in November has held, and the whole place is dry, even in our January deluge. And the firewood dry and the kindling, thank God for that. Lamp oil low, but Jansen's has plenty this year. The nights, though, Marie, are long. One knows that, of course, it's the cycle, but knowing it and living it have somehow become more difficult in the years you've been gone. A gap is there, and not simply because you are not by my side. It is as if my body simply does not understand what has happened as fall moves into winter. When winter arrives, my body is always surprised. At the equator, it must be so hard for you to remember that dark comes early these months. At around 3:30, I make my rounds, checking that the candles are in their proper places, that the log crib is filled, the kindling restocked, the lamp wells high, the wicks good. And every night the word electrification sings in my ears. Over the hill, they have a whole different life, Marie. They read by glass filaments at midnight. I have been reading, though. Dark falls fully by 4. I get my evening going, the stove and the lamps and candles. I putter around making dinner, have my beer, and settle in. I'm reading The Little Courtesy Book by Mason and Fowles. Why, I don't quite know, but I am being instructed. For example, upon leaving special events, one should never rush around fawning farewells to each and every one unless the gathering is very small. And at a dinner party, if I should drop a piece of silverware onto my lap, I am to ignore it until a servant comes into the room, then tell him in quiet tones. So you see, Marie, I will be quite the proper gentleman when you return. Mother is not doing well. It's the hip again. I won't go into details just now, but I do visit often. If I miss a visit, Mother certainly lets me know. Marie, that photograph you sent, I cannot tell you how much I enjoy it. Imagining from here the ability to open to the warm air so much skin. Your face is so dark, Marie, and that blouse, is it native? I have made it a practice not to be a jealous man. I am good at it after this long, but not perfect. That gentleman you're with, Marie, in the picture, the one with the straw hat and smoking the cigarette, is he a fellow scientist? The two of you look so happy, as if you had discovered a new species. A smile like that on your face can fuel my days, Marie. Well, my courtesy book tells me that when one says goodbye, one ought to do so quietly and not prolong it. The wind is coming up. Those clumps of cedar you like for their fragrance are being blown from the trees, and I'd better get more wood in. So farewell for today, Marie, and though I'll have written you many times over before your next precious post appears in my box, how many of your letters must have been lost. I admit that sometimes I curse the word Sumatra. When it arrives, it will be as if the first. In great fondness, as always, Walter. And I'll just end with the title piece for this book. It's called The Choreographer. I think I will if I can find it. That's the last one. I have these Post-it tabs in here and I can never figure them out where I put them. It's embarrassing. I'm so organized when I come to a reading and then I get disorganized when I'm reading. The choreographer. And this, I think, really has to do with the topic of ulterior motives. I think ulterior motives are one of the things that get in the way of our being honest and authentic people. The choreographer. At last, he understood that all his life had been choreography for his funeral. He came to this not through therapy, but during a walk in the woods on his friend Bernstein's sheep farm in southern Oregon. It was January. He'd been invited to spend the week. And early Monday morning, before the others were up, he went walking in the cold, the maples still holding brilliant leaves on their lowest branches, his boots crunching ice along the path. He stopped at the pond, broke off a pane of ice from its surface, held it up, saw his own crazed reflection there, an abstraction he was proud to appreciate, and he wanted to tell Bernstein about it. Bernstein, a painter, tell him about the fascinating distortion, the outline of the nose limning a raised ridge in the ice, the chin line carved along its edge. He wanted his friend to know that he understood abstraction. And when he came back into the house, went into his paneled room overlooking the sheep pen, took off his jacket and gloves, and rehearsed his quick speech about the glassy ice, he knew then, in the quiet of the house, that the entire speech was meant to plant in Bernstein's head the possibility, the suggestion of his painter friend rising at his funeral and saying, "I just wanted to say that he understood abstraction." He sat on the bed, and in a moment less of honesty than of a long life's filtration, saw that almost everything he had said or done in his life after, say, age 30, had been funeral choreography. For decades now, he admitted, he'd pictured the exact room of his memorial. Warm yellow light, metal chairs, a bank of windows revealing a mature garden, wine and hors d'oeuvres on a table at the rear, a crowd larger than the capacity of the place, a winter afternoon, perhaps not unlike what today's afternoon will be, he thought. How familiar he was with that place. It had been his, detail after detail added for 30 years now, was always there when he spoke, didn't speak, acted, didn't act. When he was a lover in order that the beautiful woman he was caressing might at that memorial stand, only at the end, mind you, and in a soft voice say, "I just wanted to mention that he was a wonderful lover," and then 10 women, emboldened, would stand and in a quickly accelerating crescendo say, "He certainly was," and it would be a moment of great humor, memorable. When he took time to speak with a postman who brought his mail, and he asked after the postman's kids, it was in hope, really, that the postman would rise that same day and say, "He always asked about my family, always remembered my kids' names." When he was a teacher, he taught not so much to share knowledge, but to assemble a legion of potential memorial goers, each of them standing to say, "He taught me so much, and he was so important to me formatively, and the world will never be the same." And so it went. When he visited the sick, helped a neighbor change a transmission, bought season tickets to the symphony, studied the Ramayana, traveled to difficult places, all was toward memorial accolade. He brought tenderness to everything he did. He'd give you the shirt off his back. He was an underground scholar. He knew more about John Cage than most musicians I know. He could name the streets of Nairobi in his sleep. And of course, his friend Bernstein's abstraction comment, and his good wife, positioned at the side of the room, surrounded north, south, east, west, by his 4 kids, all of them laughing and weeping. He couldn't know, though, on this clear winter day in southern Oregon, that his memorial would be nothing like that. His wife would have arranged a simple service in the Presbyterian church. Word of his death would not have gone out widely, one of his sons having missed the deadline for the obituary. And there was a storm, brutal rain, dangerous driving. Family and extended family would come, but Bernstein would be in Hawaii, the postman long dead, students spread around the globe, most of them hearing of his death only months later, and no lovers, not one. Why would they have heard? A neighbor would rise to say, "He helped me change my transmission, and I still have the scars to prove it." But the little joke would have gone over badly, sounding strangely bitter. But for this Monday morning, he was at peace with himself, the confidence of a choreographer just before opening night, certain that his dancers know their moves, that the stage is clean, the music cued, the lights just right, the understudies stretching in the wings. Thank you, everybody.